From WisPolitics in Madison, you're listening to Capitol Chats.
Hello, everybody. This is Kate Morton with WisPolitics.com here with a Capitol Chats podcast brought to you by Spectrum. Today, I'm here with my colleague Adam Kellenhofer to talk about his interview with U.S. Senator Ron Johnson. So, Adam, what did you guys talk about?
Hi, Kate. Yeah, we actually covered a lot of ground in this interview. It's relatively short, but we cover pretty much everything from presidential candidates to what's going on in Russia and what's going on in the House with the move to try to at least impeach President Joe Biden. So let's just get right into it.
Welcome to the show, U.S. Senator Ron Johnson. It is a pleasure to have you on Capitol Chats.
Hello, Adam. I'm happy to be on.
Good to hear. So what are some of the biggest pieces of legislation you're working on right now?
Well, I'm certainly encouraging both the House and the Senate to take up an appropriations process. I have not been particularly pleased with how little we've done to really curb the out-of-control deficit spending, our growing debt. I was very disappointed in the deal eventually reached on the debt ceiling. I thought the House had an initial proposal that was adequate. They were going to increase the debt ceiling by $1.5 trillion. Attached to it, things like the REINS Act, which would be very pro-growth, cut back on or limit spending to a certain extent, not as much as we need to limit spending. But then Speaker McCarthy took that and didn't negotiate a set dollar amount, suspended the debt ceiling through all of 2024. And that's probably going to increase the debt ceiling by about $4 trillion. So, I mean, that's where we're at right now. We're just not getting serious about the danger we are in when it comes to our growing debt and our expanding deficits. But now we've got the numbers for 2024 fiscal year. We ought to go through a more thoughtful appropriation process, pass appropriation bills, or at least through the committee, bring them up the floor of the Senate, allow an amendment process. I know they're working on the farm bill, which I would call the food stamp bill, because about 80% of the funding is really on food stamps. There are going to be things that we're going to be working on for the benefit of Wisconsin farmers, making sure that, for example, schools can utilize all types of fresh and frozen vegetables and those types of things, dairy. So there's all kinds of details within these larger bills, but I'm still focusing on what we need to do to curb the size of the federal government and stop the mortgage of our children's future.
That makes sense. So there's, sticking kind of with House news here, there's been a House push to impeach President Biden. Are you on board with that effort?
Well, there's certainly members of his administration that should be impeached first. I would start with the Secretary Mayorkas. I would then hold impeachment hearings on Secretary Blinken, who lied to our investigators, saying that he never emailed Hunter Biden when we've got those emails that he did. Again, lying to Congress is a serious offense. Now, Merrick Garland, the revelations of the obstruction of the IRS's investigation to Hunter Biden is nothing short of breathtaking. What is being revealed, and of course, Hunter Biden got the sweetheart deal, which should outrage every American. I mean, we do rely on an equal application of justice under the law. That's not what we're getting under this administration, not even close. And they quick rush this. Well, didn't rush it. I mean, it took them five years to investigation come up with these very reduced charges. They allowed statute of limitations to lapse on some of the more serious charges, didn't even look into certain things. The investigators weren't made privy to information that other members of the Department of Justice, FBI, had access to. So this is a real outrage. It's not really being covered by the mainstream media, but anybody who's interested can go to sites like Just the News or other conservative media to really understand the outrageous double standard dual system of justice we have operating in this country right now.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Hunter Biden investigations. Since there have been charges against Hunter Biden, but there hasn't really been like a smoking gun against Joe Biden himself to kind of show that he's received any kind of payments or anything related to this. Without that kind of smoking gun, how significant do you think this investigation is for President Biden?
Well, first of all, there's not been a serious investigation of Joe Biden. It seems like the investigators were being blocked at every turn, and that they didn't, for example, John Durham didn't investigate key members of the FBI in terms of the Russian collusion hoax. Now we're finding out the IRS investigators, first of all, the investigatory team was pulled off the case. I mean, in an unprecedented fashion. They wanted to indict Hunter in different jurisdictions, and they were blocked from doing that. They weren't allowed to talk to different witnesses. They weren't even able to bring up, for example, the name Big Guy in their questioning of certain witnesses. So again, the investigation into Hunter, much less Joe Biden, has been completely obstructed by certain members of the Department of Justice and the FBI. So I personally think there's all kinds of incriminating evidence. So Senator Grassley and I laid out the vast web of foreign financial entanglements of certainly Hunter Biden. We've known about the emails saying that the big guy was going to get 10%. Now we've seen other instances where Joe Biden is referred to as the big guy. So there is all kinds of evidence. I think it's a matter of opinion as to whether or not we have the smoking gun. But if you haven't been able to track down, for example, the bank records, trace where all this money goes, Congress is very limited in terms of what we, certainly our investigators is very limited in terms of the access to records we got. But even with that limited access, I think we laid out a convincing case. I certainly thought Joe Biden was unfit to become president of the United States. And should he become president now that he is, I think he's highly compromised by this vast web of foreign financial entanglements. So I think there's more than enough evidence. It's up to the listeners, I guess, to determine whether they believe it's a smoking gun. But this man never should have been elected president.
All right. So I kind of want to switch gears a little bit here to more foreign policy related. I guess this is a little bit foreign policy related. So with the recent news of Wagner Group, the private military corporation in Russia led by Prigozhin, there's been a revolt actually in Russia recently over the weekend. Do you think that's going to lead to a quicker peace action in Ukraine, or what do you think is going to play out here?
Well, unfortunately, the head of the Wagner Group, who is engineering the coup, which has at least been halted for the time being, is probably more of a militant than anybody serving under Vladimir Putin right now. We talk about Hunter Biden and Joe Biden and their vast web of foreign financial entanglements. Well, Ukraine is a featured country in that those financial entanglements, and you've got to go back and exactly see what all happened in Ukraine. The Revolution of Dignity, Joe Biden's almost immediate involvement in Ukraine. The firing of the prosecutor general Shokin, who was investigating the corrupt oligarch that Hunter Biden and his now convicted business partner Devin Archer joined the board of, got paid $4 million. There is way more to this story than is even being reported now, and an awful lot of details are coming out. There's a much larger issue at hand here than just the corruption of the Biden family.
So do you think that there's like corruption among Wagner Group or among the mercenaries in that group or anything like that? Or
well, again, that's Russia. I mean, I'm just saying, the U.S. government's involvement in everything concerning Ukraine runs deep, and it starts in the State Department with people like Victoria Nuland, other people that are serving with Joe Biden. We just haven't untangled the entire mess. But all I can say is the support for the Ukrainian Revolution of Dignity started under Victoria Nuland and the Biden administration. And all I can say is take a look at the results. Listen, I'm supportive of the Ukrainian people. I'm supporting anybody who values their freedom, are willing to fight for their families and their freedom and their territorial integrity. But you also have to recognize that the U.S. involvement pushing this, has basically led to the widespread destruction of Ukraine in general and tens, hundreds of thousands of lives lost. This has been a big mess. This policy initiated by the Biden administration or the Obama administration, spearheaded by Joe Biden then and now, has been an utter disaster for the Ukrainian people. I mean, you just have to look at the facts there, and you have to go back and figure out what all happened here. what spawned all this? To what extent was the U.S. government involved in this? And again, that's making no apologies for the war criminal, the evil individual that Vladimir Putin is, and the people that are committing the atrocities in Ukraine. But this hasn't worked out well.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, so just two more last questions here, if you can bear with me. So, are you encouraging anyone to run against Joe Biden right now? I know you usually don't endorse well ahead of the primaries, but are you talking to anyone, encouraging anyone here?
Well, first of all, I think Joe Biden's presidency has been an utter disaster. Almost every policy he has pushed has weakened this country and emboldened our enemies. I personally think Bobby Kennedy's candidacy is quite intriguing. I've gotten to know Bobby Kennedy quite well. We fought the same battle in trying to get the truth out regarding COVID and the vaccines, and our lack of early treatment, and how we mandated the vaccines on people. So I've been fighting that battle with Bobby Kennedy. I've learned to respect him, his knowledge of the depth of his research. And so now he's challenging Joe Biden. I think it's very interesting. The mainstream media just brushes him off, calls him a conspiracy theorist, uses every pejorative against him, just writing him off. But he's having an impact right now. You take a look at public opinion polls of any presidential candidate. Sounds like looks like he has the best unfave measure right now. He's polling about 20% of the Democrat Party. So I think it's pretty intriguing what's happening on the Democrat side. The Republican side, we've got more than a dozen candidates right now. We'll see how that all sorts itself out. As you know, I don't endorse people in primaries.
All right, that's fair. That was actually my next question. But moving on to the Senate side of things, are you encouraging anyone to run against U.S. Senator Tammy Baldwin?
I'm willing to talk to anybody who's considering it. Once again, I just don't get involved in primaries. I'll let first of all, the candidates make their pitch to primary voters, but I'll offer any help and advice I can offer to people in terms of how to run a campaign. I think the main thing Republicans have to do is we need a very strong grassroots effort. We need to encourage early voting. We're not particularly fond of it, but that's the reality situation. You have to recognize reality, and we need to compete prior to election day. We can't go into election day a couple 100,000 votes down here in Wisconsin. So, our new chairman of our party, Brian Schimming, is all on board that as well, and it's going to be a big push on the part of Republicans.
Yeah, we definitely heard a lot of the pushing for early voting at that Wisconsin Republican Party convention. But that's actually all I have time for today. So thank you very much for joining me on today's show, Ron Johnson. It was a pleasure to have you.
Have a good day. Stay well.
Well, Adam, thanks for sharing that interview. And if our listeners want to hear more about what's happening in the U.S. Capitol, they can head to our website at wispolitics.com for our DC Wrap weekly newsletter.
That's right, Kate, and that is a free newsletter. And also, if our listeners want to check out any of our DC breakfast events, they can head over to the events page from our homepage at wispolitics.com. But for now, I'm Adam Kellenhofer.
I'm Kate Morton.
Thanks for tuning in to WisPolitics Capital Chats, brought to you by Spectrum.